You're watching UATV News. My name is Inna Kosinska. Good evening. Politics, economy and security. These are the main topics that presidents of Ukraine and the United States, Volodymyr Zelensky and Joe Biden, will discuss during their meeting in Washington. According to Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, Kyiv intends to declare its readiness to increase the share of American investments in the Ukrainian economy. He also stated that it is necessary to bring the strategic partnership of the two countries to a new level. On August 30, the leaders will talk about the situation along the contact line as well.
We understand everything, countering the Russian aggression, the question of Donbas, the question of Crimea and what steps are expected. We have discussed some very specific ideas. I can't say about them yet, but the negotiations on this issue were substantive.
Besides, Kuleba also said that Kyiv is waiting for a specific list of reforms needed to join NATO. According to him, when it comes to Ukraine's membership in the North Atlantic Alliance or the EU, the weight of the political component is greater than the technological work. The investigation materials of the Ilovaisk tragedy will be declassified. The documents will appear on the website of the Prosecutor General's office. This was stated by the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, Irina Venediktova. According to her, one of the main versions of the tragedy is the Russian invasion and murder of the Ukrainian military. The volume of materials of criminal proceedings is more than 300 volumes, of which more than 70 were classified. The tragedy took place in August of 2014 after large-scale battles. Illegal armed groups fired at the Green Corridor, along which, by agreement, Ukrainian fighters were supposed to leave. 368 soldiers were killed, another 430 were wounded.
It's really important for us to start declassifying those documents. Examinations are secret. I even want a page on the website of the Prosecutor General's office for everyone to see. In addition, the lists of the victims were classified as well.
Russian army began its large-scale exercises at training ranges in the southern regions of the country, as well as in the occupied Crimea, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. They will last until September 15th. After the occupation of Crimea in 2014, the Kremlin conducts regular military exercises on the peninsula and in the Black Sea. Also, it delivers military equipment there, including air defense systems. In 3 months, Ukraine will switch to a paperless mode. According to the Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, President Volodymyr Zelensky signed the law on transferring all public services online. Soon, not a single state agency will be able to require any paper certificate, since all information will be contained in electronic register.
Thanks to the paperless mode, the number of electronic services will increase significantly and the corruption component will be completely eliminated. The Ministry for Digital Transformation is actively working on the automation of services in order to exclude the influence of the human factor on decision-making.
August the 9th is the International Day of Indigenous Peoples. It was approved by the United Nations in 1994. According to the UN, there are 370 million representatives of indigenous peoples in the world. They live in the 19 countries and are native speakers of more than 5,000 ethnic languages. In July, the parliament passed the relevant law recognizing the Crimean Tatars, Karaites and Krimchaks as indigenous peoples. This is more than 350,000 people. The law defines the legal status of indigenous peoples and guarantees them the right to self-determination within Ukraine's borders.
The adoption of the law on the indigenous peoples of Ukraine on July 1, 2021 became evidence of the priority for Ukraine of issues related to the formation and implementation of a comprehensive state policy of ethnic and national unity, harmonization of inter-ethnic relations, and the protection of the rights of indigenous peoples. The ongoing occupation of Crimea actualizes the problem of ensuring the rights of the indigenous peoples of Ukraine. The whole nation, the Crimean Tatars, the indigenous people of the peninsula, has become victims of massive repression and persecution.
The law on indigenous peoples allows Ukraine to take a serious step at the international level, in particular to strengthen cooperation with the European Union to move closer to NATO standards. Eskander Bariev, chairman of the board of the Crimean Tatar Research Center, said this in his comment to TV channel Dom. With this law, Ukraine expands the rights of the Crimean Tatars, Karaites and Krimchaks, while Russia discriminates them.
Это очень важный посыл для наших
This is a very important message for our indigenous peoples, Crimean Tatars, Karaites, Krimchaks, who remain in the occupied territory. Their future can only be in Ukraine because Ukraine is taking steps to protect the rights of indigenous peoples. When we talk about the rights of indigenous peoples, it is not only the right to preserve identity, it is not only the right to preserve culture, customs and traditions, but it is the right to land, natural resources, and the right to self-determination. And the Crimean Tatars have decided that they want to live as part of an independent Ukraine. And this is a very important process, including in the process of the occupation.
The world can lose a unique object of cultural heritage, the Bakhchysarai Palace in Crimea, forever. This is the opinion of Svetlana Fomenko, Deputy Minister of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine. According to her, the occupation authorities are carrying out reconstruction as if it was a shopping or entertainment center. Could Ukraine protect an architectural monument? Our journalists found out.
The Khan's Palace in Bakhchysarai is a unique architectural monument of the 16th century. It took 200 years to build it, and it has grown into an ensemble of 16 objects. This is the only example of the Crimean Tatar Palace architecture in the world, but from the very beginning of the occupation of Crimea by Russia, it is unprotected, especially after the occupants began the so-called restoration of the palace in 2017.
This is in fact the only material mention of the heritage of the Crimean Tatar people, which is directly related to their history and culture, and now the repairs are taking place there, as if it is a shopping mall of an ordinary building that does not need protection. These assets are not reproducible, and if we lose them, then we will have no way back.
Crimean Tatar activists still had access to the facility at the very beginning of the renovation works. Being on the site, they have discovered that the so-called restorers destroyed the unique tile. The worker who laid this tile also did not have time to pass the method because new technologies appeared. It was interrupted at the beginning of the 19th century, but it was still intact not long ago. However, now it is broken. Due to unprofessional actions during the so-called restoration of the Greatkhans Mosque, destruction has already started there as well. After the works on replacing the roof beams, tiles were over, the walls cracked. And so far nothing is done. As for the main building, over which a large canopy was erected, the roof was partially or completely dismantled. This ancient tile was removed, and so far no work has been done till this time. Unfortunately, there is simply no way to get inside or get a plan of restoration works. Experts say there are many cultural heritage sites remaining both in the occupied Crimea and in the temporarily uncontrolled territories of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Now the task of Ukraine is to defend its right for them. The first thing to do is not to forget where it is. We have to constantly articulate, inform the world's community that it is a Ukrainian site, it is a national Ukrainian site, that it is a Ukrainian cultural product, object, and so on. The mechanisms can be different, starting from the classical mechanism of digitalization, when we create digital projects in which we form and show this object as a truly Ukrainian one. Ukraine has already appealed to the UNESCO for its experts to stop the deliberate destruction of the authenticity of the Bakhchysarai Palace, but the organization lacks legal mechanisms to get there. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Yulia Krychkova, UATV News.
The National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine intends to ask Interpol to put Viktor Yanukovych and his son Alexander on the international wanted list. This became possible due to the decision of the High Anti-Corruption Court on Yanukovych's arrest in absentia. The Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office and the National Anti-Corruption Bureau sent relevant motion at the end of July to the High Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine. Fugitive President Viktor Yanukovych and his son Alexander are suspected of illegally taking possession of the Medjugorje residence. The case has been investigated since December 2019. It contains more than 1,500 volumes of materials. The 2020 Olympics in Tokyo have officially ended on Saturday. As a result, Ukraine took the 16th place. And in the overall rating table, it was the 44th among 206 participating countries. The Ukrainian team has got 19 medals, 1 gold, 6 silver and 12 bronze ones. The final silver was brought to Ukraine by the cyclist Olena Starokova. In the women's sprint, this is the first silver medal in the history of games for Ukraine. The only gold medal this year was won by wrestler Jean Belanyuk. Also, for the first time, our team won awards in artistic swimming and karate. Moreover, the Ukrainian judge Pavlo Vasilenchuk became the best at the Olympic boxing tournament. He was the only referee from Ukraine in Tokyo. Minister of Youth and Sports of Ukraine, Vadim Hutsait, called such results a great success for our country.
Our young athletes demonstrated excellent results. I'm sure your Olympic gold is yet to come, and we will work together so that the anthem of Ukraine at the next Olympics will sound as often as possible. Thanks to athletes, coaches, and all the great team that worked for the result. We are proud of you.
The Chernobyl exclusion zone is a tourist magnet of Ukraine. The state is going to develop tourism in this direction within the framework of public diplomacy. Earlier, the president initiated the launch of a 3-year program for the development of the zone around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. What is going to change and how does the state plan to attract foreign tourists? Our correspondents know.
Dmytro Denisenko visited Chernobyl zone for the first time 6 years ago. He was very impressed by the trip. When I was leaving at the end of the excursion, it was as if everything inside me turned upside down. I realized that I would definitely return there. Well, I don't know. You go there and that's it. You are far from civilization, there are only nature and harmony. Chernobyl is the place where nature has been correcting human mistakes for 35 years already. Wild animals and birds have returned here. In recent years, the city of Pripyat has been attracting more and more tourists. Before the pandemic, in 2019, about 124,000 tourists visited the exclusion zone. 80% of them were foreigners. They brought more than $100 million to the country's budget. Before quarantine, the majority of all the tourists came from Great Britain, Poland, Germany, Czech Republic and Belarus. These are top 5 countries that travelers arrive from. We also had many travelers from the US. Now we have tourists from Poland, Arab countries, Americans sometimes appear as well. Today there are hotels working here, tourist routes have been laid. 2 years ago, the flow of tourists to Pripyat increased by 15% after the release of the HBO series Chernobyl. However, the quarantine has made its own adjustments, and many people believe that it is still not safe here. In fact, you should not be afraid. If you follow the official approved tourist routes, there is nothing dangerous there. The approximate dose accumulated per day is 4,000th of a microsievert, which is 250 times less than the permissible annual accumulation rate. The key challenge is to change people's perceptions. That Chernobyl is not a tragedy zone, but a zone of Ukrainians' victory over a terrible enemy, the radiation. This should be a part of government policy.
Раніше, ще там років 10 більше тому,
10 years ago, private structures were the only Chernobyl operators who turned the understanding of Chernobyl as a tragedy and a place where the greatest radiation catastrophe took place. They showed it as a place of victory, where the war ended, where the liquidators did their job, where nature has recovered. The program for the development of the exclusion zone around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant will help make Chernobyl a powerful magnet for tourists from all over the world. Here they want to update the main routes, create a modern checkpoint and equip recreation areas.
We're now announcing the Chernobyl Conservation Project. Its main goal is to complete preservation and conservation of Pripyat city, because you can bring a lot of tourists here, but it is important that the city is safe. This is the construction of a new Chernobyl hub, where one can eat normally and deliciously, and the exhibition will actually move there next year.
Video surveillance cameras will also be installed. They will help track down tourists who enter the area illegally and engage in vandalism. The Cabinet of Ministers plans to not only increase the flow of tourists to Chernobyl, but also provide safe conditions there. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Yulia Granovska, UATV News.
That's all for this hour. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Twitter and Facebook pages. Thank you for staying with the UATV channel. Goodbye.